Welcome to the SitRep for today, which is the 4th of March, 2023. We are marching through 2023. Pardon the pun. What's going on? What is going on in the world? That's what this is all about, the Situation Report, where we look at stories that I found interesting from the past couple of days and go, how do I better prepare myself for a weird world that I live in now? Moderation activity is now hidden. Thanks, YouTube. Got it. Thank you for joining me, whether you're joining me on the YouTubes, on Instagram, or listening to this later on in the audio version. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully there's something interesting. What are we going to talk about today? Cats being killed off en masse, or plan to at least. Blotting out the sun, power outages, rumors of war, and World War II type rationing for climate change. Yep. If that all just made their hair stand up on the back of your neck, you're in the right place. Because me too. No, I mean, this is a whole bunch of stories that some are kind of prepper related. Some are just that I look at and go, what the fuck is going on here? This is so strange. And I'm going to start off with one of those. UK, in some leaked documents, the UK health authorities considered ordering the euthanization of all pet cats in the entire country. So this is during the first COVID outbreak. This information is coming out, and I love like how all this information is starting to come out now, and everyone's looking back at it and waggling their fingers and furrowing their brows, going, "Oh, no, the government shouldn't have done that." You know what? It was you who did that. I'm not saying you who's watching this. It was the general sort of Joe and Janes, the average people of the societies who were helping reinforce this kind of madness. And now it's coming out and people are looking at it in retrospect, which I think is a good thing. People are actually looking back at it and going like, oh, that was not good. The finger pointing, the blaming though, and going, oh, the government did this. It's like, yeah, well, the government did, but they were also acting on your behest. Sometimes they were grabbing power. They were doing all sorts of crazy shit, obviously. But a lot of the times it was backed up, or at least a blind eye was kind of turned to it from the general public. But imagine that. Imagine the government coming in saying, you have to kill your cat. I'm not a cat person. I don't like cats. I mean, it's not like I don't like cats. I just don't own cats. They're not something that fills me full of joy. I think they're kind of cool, but they're just not my thing. I'm a dog guy. But like, imagine if they had said that about dogs. That would be yet another hill that I would die on, definitely. It'd be come take it. Come on. Rock up and try. Because that ain't going to work. Anyway, just goes to show you the kind of madness that was going on behind the scenes with this information that's coming out now. During a time where everyone was a little bit confused, I think would be the best way to put it. Putting it in the best light. That's often what I try and do, instead of like looking at people and going, nefarious. They had a nefarious intent here. Going, okay, maybe they had nefarious intent, but maybe they were scared. And I think the governments were scared, and this is where they went when they were scared. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. This is where they went. Kill every cat in the country. Take people's pets away from them. They'll do it again. If you know that they have this kind of behavior once, they'll do it again. What, like, the question I ask is like, what if we found out that COVID like definitely killed everyone over 65, but was totally transmitted by kids under 12? What would happen then? Would they come and go, well, we have to imprison every child under 12 in the country? I know that's a big jump, but in reality, it's not that big of a jump for them to sit there and make plans to kill every cat in the country. That's the kind of madness. And this is kind of madness that I just like to point out to people, that our governments are not necessarily out to look after us. All right, what else is going on in the world? Let's talk about energy, because power is a big deal. I think this is one of the things that as preppers you should really think about. How do you secure your own energy? How do you secure your own power? Here's another couple of little examples. I like to put these examples of what's going on with energy systems at the moment in the world, because I think people in Australia, New Zealand, US, maybe not UK, Scandinavian countries, or wherever you're listening to this from, we've got solid systems, and the systems are working at the moment. I can foresee a future where they don't work as well. I did throw US in there, but US has been hit with a few big blackouts. I mean, Australia has been hit with big blackouts as well. But these are huge ones. Argentina just got hit with a blackout that took power away from. This story says half, but I looked into it. 20 million people. It's about 40%. 40% of the energy usage that was being used at the time. Sorry, of the energy usage that was being used at the time, this blackout dropped at 40%. And they're saying that 20 million people were left without electricity. About half the country. Yeah. So yeah, this came from fires that damaged some high energy transmission lines, those big ones, in around Buenos Aires, which is the capital, and that just instantly cut it down. The futuristic world that people assume we live in isn't really that futuristic. Our energy still comes to us the same way it did in 1950. You know, all these things travel through these systems that can be destroyed, they can be disrupted, they can have accidental accidents that fuck them up. They can be sabotaged as well. I'm not saying that this was sabotage, but when you start to look around at the world at this sort of stuff as I do, I'm seeing far too many things going on at the moment to assume that it is, or coincidence at least. I wouldn't say it's coincidence. Maybe what we're seeing is a large scale systemic failure due to increasing maintenance costs and doing the cost benefit sums on this over time, where we've privatized all these things and the company's going, well, we've got to make money. So let's just not do maintenance this year, and then the next year, and then for the next 10 to 15 years, haven't done maintenance. And then all of a sudden, you get a spate of train accidents throughout the US, which there was another one reported this morning. Also, a huge one in Greece where a number of people died. 38 people, I think, died in Greece. But, way too many things happening at the moment. All the electricity attacks that are also happening in the US at the moment, or have happened in the past 2 months in the US, kind of point to a picture that there might be something going on here behind the scenes. But anyway, that's not really the point. I'm leaving the tinfoil hat. No tinfoil hat on this one. I'm not saying there's a grand conspiracy going on behind the scenes where some people or person or people or organization is working to bring our society down. No tinfoil hat. No. Look at that. Props. Stepping up in the world here. All I'm saying is, we do have a lot of these things, and as a prepper, it's something I think about. How do I secure my energy? And I'm about to potentially, I'm saving up the money at the moment. I've just put a deposit on a aluminium canopy for the back of my ute, which I'm turning into a camping setup / mobile operations center for an emergency. And so I'm thinking once again about solar technology. I've got some solar setups. I'm thinking, what can I cannibalize out of the parts that I'm not using at the moment? Updating my batteries and things like that, because these aren't infinite technologies, by the way, in case those people who espouse solar as the answer to all the world's problems, I think have probably never used solar. It's because your panels lose efficiency every year. Your batteries lose efficiency every year in every charge cycle that they go through. So, there are flaws in this system, but it is a good mobile system. It does last a little while. Hey, Reagan on YouTube, thanks for joining me. So yeah, Argentina had half their power back knocked out. Ireland the story here is coming out of the Telegraph. Ireland, ruse mistake of the past as it struggles to keep the lights on. This one caught my eye, not just because it's an electricity thing, but for the use of the word ruse, R-U-E-S, not ruse as in a trick. Ruse as in laments or is frustrated at. I always love when a little bit of not alternative language, but something outside the usual 35 words that we see in every newspaper comes in. So it caught me for that. Backup power generators have started to arrive in Ireland to help keep the lights on during the next few winters. So here's the key point. UK, Ireland, and a lot of Europe were shitting their pants collectively about this coming winter because of the energy crisis that is going on in there at the moment, and probably rightly so. Now, there were some bad parts of that winter, but if you look at it kind of from a step back, I think they kind of dodged a bullet with this last winter. A lot of countries got through. They got through okay. It was bad in parts. There were individuals who suffered definitely, but on the whole, I think they've kind of slid through. So you would think when they were saying this winter's going to be bad, this winter's going to be bad, but then it's okay. Then we go into summer and we'll be fine. So forget about it. So that tension that everyone's feeling at the moment, don't worry about it. Don't throw your politicians out now. Everything's going to be okay. Now they're starting to look at it. This is a huge signal from Ireland, because they're looking at this and they're going, the key point here is during the next few winters, few generally denoting 3. So they're looking at this. They're looking at 3, 5, 10, 50, generally denoting 3. So they're looking at this. They're looking at 3, 5, 10, 15 years in some of these stories where they're like, hey, things are going to be bad for a while. And that's kind of what I'm planning for. So one part of this story that I want to use to highlight something for us as preppers. Personally, the apocalypse, I think it's a cool, fun thing. Not fun, but like as a thought experiment, something to plan for and go, well, that could happen. What would you do? But in reality, there's only so much you can do for a huge, large-scale event like that. I think in reality, what you need to be planning for is a hard time. That's what I see coming, is that we are going to go through a hard time. And my rough prediction, based on some data points that I've looked at, some information that I gather, some assumptions that I've made, and some dreams that I've had, it came to me in a dream. No, just the collection of miasma that comes into me. I'm looking at a kind of a 10-year period. That's what I am kind of planning for at the moment. I'm looking at the world at the moment. Okay. I think maybe for the next 10 years, maybe 15 years, things are going to be harder. We will see, possibly some form of rationing where we have to do with less. That's just purely my perspective on this. And so it changes the way I sort of think about things and the way I prep. I'm going, I'm not going out and stockpiling masses and masses of ammunition in a bunker or anything like that. I'm not planning for zombies or anything like that. What I'm looking at is going, okay, how do I sustain if there was a short term, and I'm talking short term as in 3 to 6 months, short-term disaster, emergency, economic crash, yada, 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 where things get real bad for 3 to 6 months. How do I hold out for that? But then how do I do the things after that? So how do I continue providing electricity? How do I continue providing clean drinking water? How do I continue providing food for me and my family, and security for me and my family, and my mutual assistance group and my extended friends and my community, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I'm looking at. And I think these are signals that I'm looking at. And this is part of the reason why I think that way, because I'm seeing countries now going, okay, like a country bringing in emergency power backups, things like diesel generators, things like mobile turbines, which apparently have been described effectively as jet engines, are set to be installed in areas including Dublin and near County Meath. So this isn't a short measure. This is like over 300 million euros or 350 million euros that they've just dropped on this. And it's a temporary capacity. This isn't a permanent fix. If I see a country dropping 350 millions on something temporary, that should kind of show you that, yep, something's going on here. They know some information, or they're worried about this. So yeah, keeping your eye on this sort of stuff. Their Minister of State came out and said this is an electricity emergency. To which somebody who is the detector data, I don't know, or somebody who, this is some sort of what do you call it, Gaelic term that I'm not sure how to pronounce. Detector dala. It probably means like minister of something or other, or chieftain. And I'm probably saying it totally wrong, by the way. If anyone speaks Gaelic, they're not. It's not Tecta Dala. It's Tkalarabala. Um, it's a national scandal. So there's politicking in here as well that's going on, which is just something I want to highlight because we're going to see this. We're going to see sane, rational measures get curtailed through politicking. We're going to see people pull out answers like $350 million on a temporary measure for politicking reasons, being like, hey, yeah, I'm sorting you guys out. We're putting energy in. But really what I'm looking at on the whole here, when I look at these sort of stories, I'm like, this government is scrambling. These people are scrambling. And people still believe in them. People still put all their faith in the government and go like, yeah, they're going to save us. Everything's going to be great. Like, I'm terrified to think that there's people out there who are just like, well, as long as I pay my electricity bill and a flash light comes on, I don't know. I don't know about that. The next step of this, I think, too, is because this was already highlighted in this story. Concerns about the future remain due to surging demand for electricity. So, two things in this part that I want to pull apart as well. They're already highlighting, oh, look at how much electricity we use. Look at our demand for electricity. That's what we're going to have to attack. And maybe we will. I don't know. Maybe we do use way too much electricity. But as a warning, just so you know, I can see this as a future possibility as well, that we get rationing of electricity, say, for an example. The other part of this is what causes this? What actually causes this? I just got done with a book, which I'll recommend. It's a very interesting book. I avoided it for a long time. It's called Apocalypse Never. Michael Schradinger or Schobenberger. I don't know. Very Jewish sounding name. Anyways, American guy. I assume he's American. He was a massive climate activist, huge climate activist, and then started kind of researching and really got into it. And one day realized that the extreme activism that is going on at the moment is detrimental to environmentalism. So, what he labels environmental apocalypticism or apocalyptic environmentalism. And so he belabors this point in many, many different angles at where this whole climate change argument is totally wrong and has gone awry and is actually just a lie. But whether it's a lie or not, it works. That's the problem. And so part of this is shutting down of power plants. And particularly for some reason, shutting down of nuclear power plants, which got lopped in with bad. Nuclear, bad. Nuclear, bad. Right. We get it. It's all bad. So let's get rid of them. And I've said this before. I think like if we want to maintain the lifestyle that we're doing, and there are benefits to that, we drag people out of poverty by doing that. We will put more people into poverty by not doing that, by rationing energy. So if we want to maintain the energy usage that we do now, I believe that nuclear is the only option we have right now. Yet concerns about the future remain in Ireland. Surging demand for electricity and the closure of aging gas-fired power stations has left the country vulnerable next winter and beyond. So when the government is sitting there and going, well, this is climate change's fault, this is Putin's fault, they should probably be looking in the mirror and going, me, I'm the problem, it's me. They're the ones who are doing this. They're shutting this stuff down. The environmentalists shutting this stuff down. And not that I wouldn't consider myself an environmentalist either, but there's also a balancing act we need to do here. Again, that book can explain it much, much better than I ever could. Apocalypse Never. And I think, if you want to actually arm yourself with a bit of information, it's not a bad read to get on hold of that. You bought too many electric cars, fault, says Lalia. Bought too many electric cars. Ireland did? I did? I haven't bought any electric cars, I swear. I got 0 electric cars. UK grocery price inflation hits record 17.1%. Damn. Always concerning when we're looking at grocery prices. This is one of the things that you got to be wary of, because inflation price data can be skewed, and often is skewed. And one of the things that we're looking at is one-off purchase things of non-essential items, things like large flat screens TVs, things like iPhones, things like the second monitor for your computer, things like a massage chair or an inflatable spa or whatever it is, which I'm not against those things. I was naming them because they're like around me. They've gone down in price, generally speaking. A lot of these things have gone down in price recently. Inflation data takes all of this in. The problem is, if I buy a flat screen TV, I buy it once, maybe every 10 years, maybe every 15 years. So I don't buy that every day. What I do buy every day is milk and butter and bread and oranges. And I mean, I don't eat half of that stuff, actually. Milk and butter, yeah. Let me put some real things in there. Milk and butter and steak and whiskey. Right, these are things that I buy almost every day. So I don't buy whiskey. I don't have a problem, okay? It's not a drinking problem. It's everyone else who has a problem with it. I'm fine with it. Notice how I just casually like highlighted some whiskey in the background there. This is an issue, that this cost is kind of compounding because we have to constantly do that cost. We're constantly paying out that cost. So if you're going down and you're buying groceries every 2-3 days, every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it is, your frequency of buying groceries, then you're going to have this, in the UK at least, 17.1% chucked on top. 17.1%, I'll call it what it is, tax. And I'll call tax what it is, government theft. So that's what's going on there. Mismanagement of monetary systems of our money supply by government increases inflation. And as a result, we have to pay the bill. That's the thing. You know, even if we get money from the government, they say, hey, inflation relief payments. Where the fuck did you get them? Government isn't a business. They don't buy or sell anything. They don't create anything. They take money off us, and then if we're very good little boys and girls, they might give us a little bit back. Whew, that's great. Hey, Bub, says Savage the Wild. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. Awesome posts been coming out recently from you. Love the photography. Big photography fan myself. Haven't been able to get out and do much lately, but should. But yeah. Thanks for reminding me that nature's out there and it's awesome. And we should, more often, more of us should be out there. So inflation data from EU zone has dropped as well. And it dropped as in it's come out, and it has actually dropped. It's gone down to 8.5%, I think it was. And that varies pretty greatly. Off the top of my head, I think Luxembourg might have been the bottom at 4%, and maybe Lithuania might be the top at 20%. It was definitely one of those Baltic countries. All right, this one was a super interesting one. A report that has been written, a peer-reviewed journal article of all things, has dropped, in which these academics say we should go to World War II style rationing of food and fuel in order to stop climate change. Here it comes. Here it comes, folks. So, if you don't know this about me, I am a sports and exercise scientist, which is human movement, which is the human body, which is, a science, I guess. But as part of doing that, when I was studying that, you had to learn how to read peer-reviewed journal articles. And there's a great power in learning how to read these peer-reviewed journal articles. It is another language, almost. The whole way it's framed, the whole way it's set out, the whole way it looks is totally different to reading an article in a newspaper or online. It is totally different to reading an editorial piece. There is a format that scientists have to use. And once you get used to that format, you can start to peer through the veil a little bit and see what's actually going on. So this research article is called Rationing and Climate Change Mitigation. Nathan Wood, Rob Lawler, and Josie Freer. And off memory, so I did read this. Off memory, it was Rob Lawler or Josie Freer that was the researcher on this. Okay, so it's a research article. They've gone out, they've done research, and they are putting out something. First and foremost, if you come across this article, all you have to do is read the first 2 paragraphs, and they admit in there, reluctantly and hidden within language, that this is just a philosophical piece. Read in that, what does that mean, philosophical piece? It means that these are 2 people who have a fucking opinion, who are just spewing their fucking opinion out into the world, but using the tool of a scientific peer-reviewed journal article to legitimize their own view. In no part of this article was I ever convinced soundly that there is a reason for doing this. The research into it, the person they got to research went and researched what Britain's did in World War II. And they say, hey, Britain's really knuckled down, and they rationed 2 main things. They rationed a whole heap of things, but 2 main things, which coincidentally would also help us in climate change. Putting aside that, like I was alluding to before with that book, Apocalypse Now, this climate change thing that's going on may or may not be anything to do with the elements that they're looking at here, especially one of them. Fuel, all right, I can see how you can make the argument. I can see how you can do that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can see how you do that. Food, no. You're not getting me. You're not getting me on this one. All right. Food, no. They are coming hard and fast for our food. They want to take food out of our mouths. They want to restrict what we can eat. They want to restrict the nutrition that a human body requires. They want to stop us eating the things we have eaten for literally hundreds of thousands of years. And all of a sudden, they've got a great idea. They're smarter than everyone else. And so now we need to change everything about how our bodies work. No, fuck that. You're not getting it. So anyway, the research that I was alluding to here, it was just on what Britons did. And they said, yes, Britons did do that. Well, no shit. I didn't need to research that. I didn't need to read a research article to do that. I could open up any freaking documentary on, National Geographic about World War II, and you can see that is the case. They did it. They had an existential crisis, though, that was going on. They had a definite threat. They're making the argument, climate change, existential crisis. We've got the same threat. It's not Nazis anymore, although they're out there in the form of Republicans or people who don't agree with me or people who don't let their kids go to drag shows. They're the Nazis, right? No, it's not about Nazis, it's about climate change. And so basically what they're saying is, yes, we think it's a good idea that they say, I'll get this correct because I don't want to shit on them too much. What they do say is that further discussion is warranted around the idea of rationing food and fuel in order to improve our chances with climate change. Yeah. This is where we're heading. And I guess my main reason for putting this out now is a forewarning. When I'm starting to look at this sort of stuff, I can see people getting a hold of this and go, here's the article, right? Here's what they would read. They wouldn't even read this. The vast majority, I reckon 99.9% of people would not even go as far as clicking on the link to PubMed or whatever the site is where you're going to get your peer-reviewed journal article. I think this one was from TNF. They wouldn't even go that far. They'd look at the New Yorker headline on it, which would say, "We can save the Earth by rationing food and fuel," or something. Very little we need to do, blah, blah, blah. And people read that and go, "Oh, yep, it was scientists who did it." I mean, if we've learned nothing from the last 3 years, don't just go, "Oh, scientists said it. Okay." Don't do that. We're the scientists. Each and every one of us are a scientist. We're always constantly conducting experiments. We all have hypothesized that we are throwing out into the world and constantly testing and adjusting to see if they work. We might not all be using the correct methodology, but in some form or shape, we're doing that. So trust in yourself. And I'm not saying you have to go and read these sort of things anyway. But if you happen to be one of that 0.1% of people who went and clicked on it, it would say rationing and climate change mitigation, and then it's got the names of the people, and then it says, so in this paper, we argue that rationing has been neglected as a policy option for mitigating climate change. Blah 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 blah. Whole heap of assumptions in here as well. There is a broad scientific consensus that avoiding the most severe impacts of climate change requires a rapid reduction in global emissions. So, this is what they're hanging their hat on. You can argue almost any point in here, but most people wouldn't get down to this second sort of part of the paragraph. The paper is primarily based on philosophical and ethical argument and policy analysis, particularly highlighting the normative assumptions beyond policy choices. I mean, yeah. Good for you for having an opinion. I like it. But yeah, this is the kind of thing that people get a hold of, and then this starts a movement, this starts a zeitgeist, and all of a sudden, you're a bad person for wanting to eat. You're a bad human for wanting to eat what humans have eaten for hundreds of thousands of years. We're going to block out the sun too. This is good stuff. UN proposes emergency sun blotting. The UN wants to reflect sunlight away from Earth as emergency option for global warming. Disturbing shit, right? This kind of geoengineering stuff on large scale. Name, I don't know, even 10 things that we've done on large scales from a scientific perspective that have benefited all human scales from a scientific perspective that have benefited all human beings and had zero side effects. Because I can't think of one, to be honest. Hey, here's a great idea. People's teeth are bad. Let's put fluoride in the water. Hey, it could be some bugs in the water. Let's put chlorine in the water as well. Hey, here's a good idea. We need more sugar in the world. Australia, that's a great climate. Grow sugar. Oh shit! Now Australia's got a sugar cane beetle problem. That's bad. That's going to cost us money. Hey, here's another good idea, because we just keep chasing this thing. Let's bring in sugarcane toads that eat those beetles and just let them go. Oh, now Australia has a sugarcane toad problem. So on and so forth. I can think of many different things off the top of my head where there have been unintended consequences at best, like that unfortunate or uncomfortable consequences, or some that have been ecologically destructive, and some that have been almost genocidal, I would say. People rocking up to foreign lands and going, "Hey, do you want to trade?" And then disease sweeping through those populations, just as another example. So yeah, this sort of stuff, it disturbs me. But is it actually happening? Well, it's a plan from the UN. It's not actually happening. Or it is. Mexico plans to ban just this activity, solar geoengineering, after a US startup company went down to Mexico and just started fucking doing it. They just went rogue and they started doing it down in Mexico. A US startup carried out a geoengineering experiment in Mexico, which the country claims was done without prior notice or consent. Mexico announced this Tuesday a set of measures to ban solar geoengineering experiments in the country after a US startup began releasing sulfur particles into the atmosphere in the northern state of Baja California. So, already happening. And this is the kind of stuff that I can see happening more and more. This is a startup company that's obviously really concerned about this. This is one of the problems that I see happening in the future. Kind of, this isn't it, but eco-terrorism. Like if tomorrow a organization came out, say Extinction Rebellion or Greenpeace, or you name your whatever, stop the oil. They came out tomorrow and said, yes, those attacks on the energy system, that was us. We were firing the guns into the transformers throughout different states in the US. Totally wouldn't surprise me. It would make sense. That's tinfoil hat. It would make sense if that happened. That's my little subtle tinfoil hat conspiracy theory of what's going on behind the scenes here when we're seeing a whole heap of these things happen. When somebody is fanaticized in this way, and I have some experience with this because I have fought in a war with people who were extremists, and I have seen how they act, and I have interacted with them at times. The one thing that there's many things that I came away from that experience with, but I remember thinking, like, there are no limits here to what these people would do. There's zero limits to what a fully fledged Taliban believer would do to me, to my country, to anything. That's what I think with these extreme environmentalists, these apocalyptic environmentalists. They believe they're doing 100% the right thing, to the point where, and this is where the tinfoil hat's coming in, they would actually create environmental disasters in order to push the point, to push their narrative. That's how far it would go, to the point where it would not surprise me again if something like, I don't know, a train full of chemicals in Ohio didn't just come off the tracks. All right, that's enough tinfoil hat stuff for today anyway. This is sort of stuff we've got to look out for, though. But yeah, this story here, this rogue company just going down, the startup company, and start pumping sulfur into the atmosphere. Yeah, we're going to block out the sun. It can happen. A country in the world, or a group of countries, the EU, could get together and go, we have decided, our scientists have decided that it's the best if we block out the sun, so we're doing it. What can we do about it? Well, I can sit down here in one of the colder parts of Australia and I guess just go through my mini ice age. All right, let's wrap up things with some rumors of war. So this is all news stories around some of the conflict zones that I'm looking at the moment, and how we're seeing increases, we're seeing exacerbations, we're seeing different interesting information that might lead somewhere else, but just little tidbits that I've come across. Charlie208 on YouTube says, like the hat, I've been thinking about leaving a couple in my guest room as a joke. They'd get it. They might actually wear them. Yep. You know, you got to block the mind control rays from the lizard people somehow. So it is a joke, by the way. Tinfoil hat. It's just a prop. Fresh wave of anti-government protests strike Moldova. So I've talked about Moldova in the past, what's going on there. Russia appears to be possibly increasing their efforts in Moldova to, I don't know, to what end? Maybe overthrow the government, maybe take over. Russian defense minister accuses US of preparing provocations with chemicals in Ukraine. So this is a bit of a tit for tat false flag action that's going on at the moment, with talks about chemical weapons from both sides, but Russian Defense Ministry sort of getting on the front foot with this one. A growing share of Americans view China as an enemy of the US. There's a little graph that was put out on this one that was sent to me by my main source on Instagram, that you can see a marked difference where I think during the Trump administration, 2018, it was, there's a few different indicators here, but basically the one we're looking at is enemy. So it's the worst. It was down under 10%. Under 10% of Americans thought that China was enemy. Where is it now? It's now it's at 43%, as per this particular, the printing of this particular study. So obviously they've gone out. They haven't asked every US citizen, I imagine, but they've done the usual thing that they do with these sort of studies and pick a random group somewhere. I don't know any more information about that, whether they picked it from blue states or red states, or they picked it from high socioeconomic or low socioeconomic. I don't know if they spread it around very well. That's one of the things with this sort of information when it comes out. You can always use these statistics to highlight whatever you want. But I do find it interesting, considering the news that we've seen, and I've said this where I've been tracking this, that we had a whole heap of anti-China sort of stuff going on months and months ago, and then there was a total 180, and it was all like, we're cool, we're good, everything's fine, we're chill. everything's great. And then about 2 weeks ago, no, sorry, 3.5 weeks ago, with the onset of the balloon, it changed. And we went boom, 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 boom. Here's what China's doing wrong. Then a number of other stories that have come out around this. So what I said this could be is propaganda prepping the general public to go to war or to swallow the idea of war, because that's what I think their government is aiming for. And going to war when your general population does not want you to go to war or does not think that the people we're going to war is an enemy is political suicide. 100% of the time, it's a historical fact that you cannot do that. That's a historical fact from thousands of years of data on that. So yeah, more and more Americans apparently hating on the Chinese. This one was about draft. Interesting pattern. Dramatic increase in 2020, now at 43%. The draft was introduced in 1940 when support for entering the war was at 52%. The negative view of China could soon be in the range that might allow politically some bigger decisions. So, the draft. So to cycle back on this, what we're talking about here, the draft for World War II was introduced in 1940 in the US, and at that time, and the popular support was at 52%. And like I said, China as an enemy is now at 42%. So creeping up there. Yeah, that draft sort of stuff. There was another country that just instigated a draft. I don't know what I did with the story. I think it was Romania or Moldova. It was one of those two. But they said, look, sorry, it's not a draft, but they are starting to set the framework for a draft. And they basically said military training for all males up to the age of 55, which, someone like myself falls in. A lot of the time I think about this, I am over 10 years out of the military, which means my recall ability, like with the Australian military and certain parts of the Australian military, they actually have the ability within 8 years to, at any stage for an emergency, go, you're back in, unless you're horrifically injured or something. So there is that possibility, but I'm way beyond that. And I'm also, over 40 now, so I assume like the likelihood that they're going to come knocking on my door is very, very low. Although now, because they just did it in Ukraine, they flagged it in Russia, they're talking about it in Romania and Moldova, this draft age now going up 55, 60, 65 in certain countries. Pretty disturbing trend. Do we need our old people to fight? Maybe we do. I don't know. I look around some younger folk today and I'm like, I don't know how you'd fare. So maybe we do need that. More interesting false flag stuff coming from Russia. Russia is concerned about information that Kiev's provocation using radioactive materials could take place near Transnistria, which, if for those of you who don't know, is Moldova, the little enclave in Moldova. That's the key issue here as far as Russia. So yeah, more interesting stuff there. More false flag, maybe prepping. Jump over to Iran now. Iran is now 12 days away from making a nuclear weapon. Whoa. Anyone who's been tracking this, it's kind of been, there was a marked jump about 2 weeks ago, I think, where they were kind of at 40% last people checked. And all of a sudden, somebody else checked and they were at 83%. And you needed to be 92%, I think, in order to have enriched uranium for nuclear weapon capability. So now following on, so people were like, whoa, this is happening faster because we thought we had years. This has now shrunk it down to months. But now they're saying 12 days. So not even 2 weeks. And Iran's got the bomb. Iran's got a nuke. So that's pretty concerning, isn't it? Wait a minute. Where's this story coming from? Oh, the Jerusalem Post. Oh, would they have any benefit of, putting fear in people that Iran might get a nuke? I would dare say they do. But maybe they do know. Here's a fun fact for you. How many countries that have nukes have actually used them in war and have gone to war with someone with their nukes? Think on that. Because you could make the argument that when a country gets nukes, it actually lessens the likelihood that they would enter into a major conflict. Spoiler alert, the answer is US. It's the only one. Another Moldova update here. Transnistria announces 3 months of training of military-aged men. Here it is. Starting from March the 1st, for 3 months, men from Transnistria fit for military service aged up to 55 years will participate in the training of the contingent of peacekeepers, the so-called Tiraspol Defense Ministry said. Peacekeepers. I love that term. Reminds me of that TV show Peacekeeper, which if you haven't watched it, it's a fantastic show. Go watch it. It's very funny. And you'll kind of get the subtext of what I'm talking about here. It's somebody who keeps the peace by killing everyone. EU Commission wants to drastically boost ammunition production. The EU Commission wants to convert Europe from peacetime to war, according to The Spiegel. Yep, no surprises there. So more indications of war. Beijing to fast-track Taiwan reunification plans after extraordinary year of tensions. So we've seen a lot of this stuff about dates. Even though there was a lot of this sort of stuff in the newspaper, if you were actually looking at what intelligence organizations were putting out, and I'm going back maybe 6 months now, what Defense Force personnel were putting out into that space, they were saying things like 5 to 10 years. Behind closed doors, they might have been saying something different, but officially in the newspapers, they were saying 5 to 10 years. Then we had the US general come out very recently and said 2025. By 2025, China will move on Taiwan. Xi Jinping has apparently come out and said 2027, that's like the limit. That's when we will have reunified Taiwan by then. But what we are seeing is a dramatic increase in what China's doing. So they're clearly, and the messaging that they're doing as well. So there is clearly a ramp up of activity around this space here. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but it does look like it is getting closer to potentially happening rather than further away. And that's never a good sign. So yet another one to look out for. All right, that's it for today. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for joining me as always. Hopefully there was something in the ramblings that made it worthwhile for you. And I don't know, you spent your time listening to me and hearing this voice, and it wasn't a total waste of time. If it was, then I apologize. You should have been out in the garden. As always, though, keep your eyes open when you're out there. Keep abreast of things as best you can, or as much as you want to. Don't stare too long into the darkness, lest ye become it. But seriously, though, don't spend all your time focusing on the doom. Life is still pretty awesome. Remember, memento mori. Death is there. Death is a thing. We all will die. Use that to reaffirm your life. Use that to be proactive. Use this sort of information to drive you to prep more so that your life will be more secure, so that the life of your family and your friends and your community will be more secure just through you. So, yeah, appreciate you all joining me. Thank you very much, SpiceGale27. Appreciate the nice comment there. And until next time, gang, Semper Paratus.